Mafia boss ready to disappear forever, until a call said his ex was abandoned in hospital within minutes to live. He had planned his disappearance for months, vanishing from a world of blood, power, and endless betrayals. Dante Valenti, Mafia kingpin, had convinced himself that leaving everything behind would save him. That is, until the call came. A voice he hadn't heard in years, trembling with fear. Amara, abandoned in a hospital, fading fast, seconds from death. His heart, a fortress of pride and control, betrayed him. Every instinct screamed retreat, every memory clawed at him, and yet he knew. This was the choice that would undo him, because saving her wasn't just dangerous, it was inevitable. Before starting the today's journey, please tell me in the comments that where are I watching from? Now let's begin. He once believed disappearing would be the cleanest mercy he could offer the world. A ghost slipping between shadows, a king abandoning his ruined throne. But the night he prepared to vanish, the universe placed its hand on his throat. There are calls you can ignore, and calls that rewrite the spinal cord of your existence. He didn't know yet that he was seconds away from the moment his entire life would fracture. He didn't know that someone he had already lost was about to be taken from him again, this time without mercy, without choice, without a whisper of warning. Dante Valenti lived inside a kingdom built with the kind of precision only obsession could sculpt. Glass towers, steel floors, and silence thick enough to suffocate any emotion that dared approach. Violence had shaped him, but discipline preserved him. Every inch of his world was arranged, polished, untouchable, just the way he demanded. It wasn't luxury for luxury's sake. It was control, the one currency he trusted. Control meant safety. Control meant power. Control meant no one could ever hurt him again the way she once did. Tonight, his penthouse glowed with a sharp, metallic stillness. The lights were low, the city spread beneath him like a congregation waiting for its god. His suit jacket lay discarded on the marble counter, and the open passport beside it was the only sign that something enormous was shifting in his world. Flight booked, safe house arranged, accounts emptied and transferred. Dante Valenti, the most feared mafia boss on the eastern seaboard, was walking away from everything. Forever. He had planned this exit with the same cold precision he used to plan assassinations. No theatrics, no goodbyes, no explanations. If anyone wondered where he'd gone, he'd already be a ghost by the time they asked. But beneath the calm surface of his preparations, an old, unwelcome pulse had begun to stir. A faint, irritating echo he'd tried to bury years ago. Memories of her had no business clawing their way into this night, yet they seeped into the cracks of his focus like water through old stone. Her laugh, the way she had whispered his name when she thought he was asleep, the day she walked out and didn't look back. Amara Hale, the only person who had ever managed to make him feel something other than rage or ambition. The only person who had ever seen the man beneath the empire, and the only one he had failed so thoroughly that her absence felt like a verdict. Dante shoved the memory aside like he'd done 1,000 times. Sentiment was poison in his world, and he refused to drink it again. He moved through the penthouse with his signature calm stride. The storm outside painted quick, violent flashes across his walls, thunder rolling like a warning shot. Weather always seemed to mimic his internal landscape, or maybe he'd lived in darkness so long that storms simply recognized their own. A silent phone rested on the table, screen down. He had disconnected the line hours ago, informing the network that he was no longer reachable. Finality tasted clean, sharp, right, or so he told himself. In the hallway, he opened a black case containing a row of meticulously arranged weapons, each gleaming under the recessed lighting. He didn't need them anymore, not where he was going, but he couldn't leave them behind. Too much blood had dried onto the handles for him to part with them like discarded relics. His reflection caught his eye in the mirrored cabinet, tall, commanding, a face carved from ice and sleepless nights, a man who had never bowed, never begged, never broken. It was a lie, of course. He had broken once. The elevator chimed in the distance, the sound slicing through the silence. For a heartbeat, he thought it might be an attack, one last desperate attempt from an enemy to collect his head before he vanished. But the security cameras showed nothing. Everything remained under his flawless control. Dante locked the case, grabbed his coat, and walked back into the main living space. The city was weeping against the glass, streaks of rain twisting the lights into distorted constellations. He savored the quiet, the finality of this night. This life had taken pieces of him he would never get back. Leaving wasn't cowardice, it was strategy. But something felt off, a hairline fracture in his certainty, a subtle shift in the air like the moment before a blade sinks into skin. He glanced again at the phone on the table. Dead. Muted. Done. Yet his instincts, those violent animal instincts honed through years of betrayal and bloodshed, pressed against the base of his spine. They whispered that the world was inhaling, preparing to scream. He ignored it. Control. Discipline. Order. Thunder cracked, closer this time, rattling the penthouse windows. The storm intensified, the sky bruising into deeper shades of black. Dante appreciated storms. They reminded him of himself, unavoidable, destructive, and impossible to reason with. He opened the passport again, tracing the name printed on it. A new identity, a clean slate, a life without shadows, without enemies, without her. But as he stared at the photograph, another image intruded. Amara's face the last time he saw her, pale with disappointment, eyes weighted with something worse than anger, understanding. She had known he wouldn't choose her over this empire. She had left without asking him to try, and he had let her go, believing it was strength. It had been pride. Stupid, blinding, lethal pride. He snapped the passport shut with more force than necessary. Enough. The past had no place here. He walked toward the door, ready to end this life with the same precision he had built it. But then, a faint vibration trembled through the table. His dead phone lit up. Impossible. He had disconnected the line. No calls should have been able to get through. For a moment, he simply stared at the glowing screen as if it were an omen. Unknown caller. The pulse in his throat tightened, steady rhythm disrupted by something sharp and unfamiliar. He wasn't a man who froze easily, but something about the timing. This exact second, on the night he abandoned everything, made the world go still. The phone buzzed again, and again, and again. Dante reached for it, fingers slow, controlled, but internally braced like a man opening a door he shouldn't. The storm roared as he flipped the phone over, answering without a word. Silence. Then a shaky voice, strained and urgent, cracked through the line. "Is this Dante Valenti?" He didn't respond. His grip tightened. The voice wavered. "You need to know. Someone brought a woman into St. Mercy Hospital tonight. She was found abandoned, unconscious. No ID." A pause. But a nurse recognized her from an old file. "Her name is Amara Hale." The world tore open. Before he could speak, the connection cut. The line went dead, and the phone fell silent again. And Dante, for the first time in years, felt something inside him fracture. The storm didn't let up. It pressed against the glass like a furious reminder that the world outside still dared to move without his permission. Dante stood motionless, the faint glow of the city painting cold streaks across his face. That call shouldn't have reached him. That name shouldn't have found him. And yet it had slashed through his escape plan with surgical precision. Amara Hale, the ghost he had starved, buried, and fortified himself against. He pressed his palms against the counter, muscles flexing with a quiet violence. He didn't let himself breathe her name, not even internally. Names gave power. Names resurrected things better left dead. He forced his attention back to the objects he had arranged, The passport, the burner phone, the keys. His clean future assembled in neat, obedient lines. He was supposed to walk out the door tonight and never look back. Instead, he found himself replaying a voice he didn't recognize, saying words he refused to digest. Abandoned. Unconscious. Amara Hale. He closed his eyes. Memory ambushed him anyway. Her hands on his jaw the night they ended, trembling as though she somehow still believed he could be soft. Her voice cracking when she said, "I'm not asking you to change. I'm asking you to see me." He hadn't. He'd chosen his empire. Now she was somewhere in a hospital, nameless and alone. No. No. He slammed the door on the thought with brutal precision. He didn't owe her anything. Their story was a grave he had buried so deep the roots had rotted. He checked his watch. 2 hours until his flight. Everything in him wanted to revert to old instincts. Clean logic, ruthless detachment, movement. He reached for the passport again, forcing his grip steady. You already left her once. This changes nothing. The elevator chimed again, too sharp, too sudden. Dante spun, pulling instinctively at the gun he kept tucked beneath the table. Footsteps weren't supposed to exist here, not tonight. But the screen showed nothing except an envelope slipped beneath his door in the hallway. Dante approached it slowly. No markings, no return address, just his name, handwritten. The handwriting punched him in the ribs. He snatched the envelope, tore it open, and a single sheet slid out. The scent hit first, faint lavender, the same perfume she used to wear in early spring, the one he pretended not to notice even though it haunted his clothes for days. His jaw tightened. He unfolded the page. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't even current. It was a copy of a medical intake form. Name, Hale. Amara status, emergency, unidentified female. No contacts listed. A pen mark circled those last words. No contacts listed. As if she had no one. As if he had never existed. His pulse pounded like a war drum. He shouldn't care. He had no reason to. This was exactly the clean break he had always wanted. He crushed the paper in his fist and stopped. Something icy slid into his lungs. A suspicion. A possibility darker than any threat he'd outrun. If someone had her, if someone used her name, if someone abandoned her on purpose, then this wasn't a coincidence. This was a message, and messages in his world never arrived gently. His phone vibrated again. He froze. No number. No caller ID. Just a blinking notification from the closed network he had already shut down. A single line. You should have answered sooner. His veins went cold. This wasn't a plea. This wasn't a concerned nurse. Someone knew exactly where to hit him, and hit with precision. He stared at the screen, the storm screaming against the windows as if urging him toward a decision. He didn't like being manipulated. He didn't like surprises. And he didn't like that someone had dragged Amara's name out of its grave to force his hand. He pocketed the crumpled paper, grabbed his gun, and strode toward the door with a violence that made the air vibrate. He wasn't going to the airport. He wasn't disappearing tonight. He was going to find out who thought they could use her to pull him back into the world he was abandoning. He yanked the door open and froze at what he saw lying directly outside the threshold, drenched by storm water. A hospital bracelet with one name on it, Amara Hale, and fresh blood smeared across the plastic. The bracelet was still dripping when Dante lifted it. The blood wasn't hers. He told himself that instantly, decisively, because the alternative clawed too close to panic. But the moment the cold plastic touched his palm, something in him buckled. Not visibly, not externally, but deep in the part of him he built entire empires to protect. He scanned the empty hallway. Whoever left this had done it within minutes. No footprints, no cameras catching a face. Clean, surgical, personal. He slipped the bracelet into his pocket and walked back inside, jaw locked to the point of pain. Someone wanted him rattled. Someone succeeded. He went straight to the secure room, a steel-walled bunker behind a false panel in the library. Here, beneath layers of surveillance and encrypted servers, Dante could pull apart any threat until it confessed its maker. He powered the system up. The network lit. A message flashed instantly, waiting for him. She wasn't supposed to be alone. His stomach dropped. An unfamiliar, unwelcome sensation. He didn't know if it was dread or fury. Both tasted the same in his mouth. He typed back, "Who are you?" A blank screen. Then, "You had one job." His vision narrowed. This wasn't random. This wasn't a rival. This wasn't even a warning. This was personal. His fingers hovered over the keys, but another message appeared before he could respond. "Check the news." Dante opened the feed, and the world tilted. A headline blared across the screen. Unidentified woman found unconscious outside abandoned warehouse. Critical condition. The grainy image showed paramedics lifting a body onto a stretcher. The face was blurred, but the hair, dark, wet, tangled. His pulse stuttered. He leaned closer. Two details cut through the distortion. The ring on her hand, the bruise beneath her collarbone, both identical to ones he remembered far too well. She looked small. She looked broken. She looked cold. A sensation he didn't permit. An old one shaped like regret, pressed against the underside of his ribs. He slammed the screen off. He needed facts, not emotion. He needed control. He needed a breath, then another. But the room felt too tight, too silent, too aware of the fracture he was trying to deny. He grabbed his keys. He wasn't going to the hospital. Not yet. First, he wanted the warehouse. If someone heard her there, someone left tracks. Someone owed him answers, the kind that involved screams. He stepped into the elevator, the bracelet heavy in his pocket like a heartbeat someone had ripped out. Amara, 6 hours earlier. The world came back in fragments. Cold, wet pavement. A buzzing fluorescent light flickering above her. Then pain, sharp, spreading, electric, like someone had dragged her across gravel and left her to bleed out in the dark. Voices echoed somewhere far away. Is she breathing? Barely, call it in. She tried to speak, anything, but her throat felt full of smoke. Her fingers twitched. Someone grabbed her wrist to check her pulse, and she flinched in reflex. A face leaned over her. Shapes blurred, colors smeared. Her vision buckled. She forced her eyes open. For a heartbeat, just one. She thought she saw him. Dante. The outline, the posture, the impossible stillness. But then he dissolved into shadow, and the world collapsed again, swallowing her in black. Dante, present. The warehouse sat at the edge of the docks, a metal carcass hollowed by rust and salt. Dante stepped out of the car, rain slamming into him hard enough to sting, thunder rolling overhead like a warning he ignored. He moved through the dark, like he owned it. The ground still showed the indentations of a stretcher being dragged. A trail of blood, thin, diluted by rainwater, marked where a body had been carried. His hands curled into fists. He followed the trail to the back door. Forced entry, sloppy, unprofessional, not the work of someone trying to hide, the work of someone trying to send a message. Inside, the smell hit first. Iron, mildew, and old smoke. The lights flickered when he stepped under them. The whole place felt staged, like a theater waiting for its actor. Dante scanned the floor, a torn piece of fabric. Lavender. Her scent. His control snapped for half a second, just long enough for a rush of heat to crack through his ribs. He crouched, touching the fabric with the same reverence he once refused to give her. Then he saw it, a small metal object half hidden beneath a stack of crates. He pulled it free, a USB drive, black, unmarked, clean. Someone wanted him to find this. He walked back to the car, rain soaking through his coat, eyes burning with a new, razor-sharp clarity. Someone wasn't threatening him. Someone was playing him. He inserted the USB into the car's system. A single video file appeared. He tapped it open. The footage was dark, shaky, but the shape in the center was unmistakable. Amara, bound, bruised, barely conscious, her head slumped forward. Then a voice, distorted, mechanical, filled the speakers. "She waited for you. You didn't come." Dante's stomach turned to stone. The voice continued, "Now she pays." The video cut to black. The screen flashed a final message. "You can't walk away from what you broke." Dante's fingers dug into the leather steering wheel until it screamed. His breath came slow, controlled, deadly. Whoever did this wanted him off balance. They'd just succeeded at something far more dangerous. They'd made him angry. He reached for his phone. He had a list of enemies long enough to drown a city, but only one of them liked theatrics. Only one knew Amara existed. Only one knew how to hit Dante where it hurt. He dialed the number. It rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, smooth and satisfied. "I was wondering when you'd call." Dante's jaws clenched. "Where is she?" A chuckle. "Oh, Dante, you're already too late." The line went dead. "Understood. Here is Chapter 4, condensed but fully aligned with your narrative arc. The point of no return. Slow burn, parallel POV, heightened tension, ends with a direct, urgent communication being sent to Dante. Condensed version due to system limits. Dante didn't move for several seconds after the call dropped. The rain hammered the windshield in relentless sheets, lightning cutting the sky into violent fragments. His grip on the phone was so tight it seemed ready to crack. Too late. No one said that to him. No one got away with it. But the bastard had spoken like a man certain he already won. Dante forced his breath into a cold, steady rhythm, the kind that preceded executions. Once he had control again, he started the engine, the growl of it nearly drowned by the storm. He didn't drive away from the warehouse. He prowled through the dark streets like a predator retracing its territory, looking for something out of place, something stupid, something survivors left behind. But whoever orchestrated this wasn't stupid. They were precise, personal, and they wanted him desperate. He refused to give them that satisfaction. He reached for the bracelet in his pocket, turning it in his hand. The faint smear of blood along the edge had already darkened. His jaw flexed hard. If the blood wasn't hers, someone else had paid for this message. If it was hers, no. He wouldn't let his mind go there. He parked at an overlook where the city bled into the water, as if the skyline itself couldn't decide whether to rise or drown. He dialed a contact, one of the few men he still trusted. "Get to St. Mercy Hospital," Dante ordered. "Find out if a Jane Doe was brought in tonight. Early 20s, dark hair, severe trauma. Don't speak to anyone unless you have to. Don't use my name." "You think it's her?" the voice asked. Dante didn't answer. He didn't need to. "On it," the man said. Dante ended the call and stared out at the water. He didn't fear death. He never had. But the idea of finding her dead, or close enough to it, punched deeper than any bullet he'd ever taken. He told himself it was strategy. Attachment made people weak, and weakness was unacceptable. If she died, a vulnerability he had once allowed would become a weapon others could use against him. That was the logical explanation. The truth, the one he shoved into the corner of his mind like a dangerous animal, was simpler. He couldn't bury her again, not like this, not without answers, not without something he wasn't ready to name. Lightning split the sky again. His phone buzzed, a message from the same unknown. The address flashed again. "Come alone." Before she stops breathing. The threat was calculated, intimate, weaponized. But the more Dante repeated it in his mind, the more a truth he hated crept in. Every message, every breadcrumb, every theatrical touch had been designed to provoke his guilt, to make him feel responsible, to make him frantic. Emotion clouded judgment. Emotion got people killed, and emotion was exactly what Marcello wanted from him. Dante slowed the car at a red light that blinked in the storm like a failing heartbeat. The city around him looked drowned, hollow, suspended in a bleak stillness. His instinct screamed at him to go. His pride whispered otherwise. What if the address was fake? What if she wasn't there? What if Marcello only wanted to drag him by the throat into a kill box? Dante had escaped assassination attempts designed by people smarter than Marcello. He wasn't about to trip over sentiment now. He closed his eyes, rain hammering the roof like fists. If she's alive, she isn't because of you. If she dies, it won't be your fault. You owe her nothing. He repeated the lie until it felt almost true. His phone buzzed. Another message. Short. Brutal. Help me. His chest cinched. The breath ripped out of him. Her name wasn't attached, but he felt it anyway. He knew her cadence. He knew her desperation. He knew the shape of her plea like a phantom limb. He forced the phone face down on the seat. He couldn't trust it. He couldn't trust anything. This was manipulation. This was bait. This was his enemy using an old wound to control him. He refused to be controlled. Dante turned the car around, not toward the address, but toward his penthouse. He needed strategy, soldiers, surveillance, leverage. He needed to dismantle Marcello methodically. He needed to be cold. Going alone was suicide. He wasn't going to die for Amara Hale. He wasn't going to die for anyone. He accelerated, storm water kicking in violent waves behind him. His chest throbbed like a bruise. His jaw stayed locked. He told himself this was logic. He told himself walking away was strength. He told himself he was winning. But the truth was simpler. He was afraid, not of Marcello, not of death. Afraid that if he saw her dying, something inside him would snap beyond repair. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it. Another. Ignored. Another. He didn't even glance. By the time he reached the penthouse garage, he was drenched in silence except for the raging storm. He parked, wiped his face, and stepped out. The messages continued, piling like debris against the dam of his pride. He walked to the elevator, didn't look at the phone, didn't acknowledge the tightening in his throat. By the time he reached his penthouse door, the phone vibrated one final time, hard enough that it nearly slid off the seat. He grabbed it only to shut it off completely. The screen lit automatically. One last incoming message, a voice recording, marked urgent. He hesitated. Then he deleted it, without listening. He shut the phone off. The device fell silent. Dante exhaled slowly, convincing himself he had just chosen survival over weakness. He believed he had won the moment. He believed the crisis was exaggerated. He believed he still had time. He walked into the penthouse, removed his coat, loosened his tie, and stepped toward the bar with the confidence of a man who thought he had regained control. He didn't see the storm tightening. He didn't see the consequence racing toward him. He didn't see the truth he had just destroyed. Amara. Critical point. Her eyelids fluttered without opening. Her body felt distant, numb but burning, weightless but aching. She tried to swallow, but her throat barely obeyed. She tasted metal, cold, bitter. A monitor beeped somewhere, not steady, not safe, a stumbling rhythm like her heart was trying to outrun something invisible. Pain rolled through her in slow, punishing waves. Then a voice. Marcello's. You know, he could have saved you by now. Her fingers twitched uselessly against the restraints. He's not coming, Marcello whispered beside her ear. He made his choice. She tried to speak. A rasp barely emerged. Ni. Marcello chuckled softly. He didn't even listen to your message. Amara's breath hitched. Her pulse stuttered. Her eyes filled behind closed lids, useless tears that slid down her temples. The monitor spiked, then dipped, then stuttered again. Her body was done fighting, her strength fractured, her consciousness blurred at the edges. In the dim corner of the room, a red light blinked on a machine, recording her vitals slipping into danger. Marcello stood, bored. He wiped her blood from his hand with a white cloth. Tragic, he murmured. She always loved you more than you deserved. Amara tried one final time to breathe deeper, just enough to stay awake. Her body refused. The world washed out, fading into gray. The line on the UDE monitor wavered, and for the first time that night, it almost went flat. Dante. The moment of false victory. He poured a drink. Slow, steady, controlled. He felt the calm return like a cold tide. Everything would be handled tomorrow, with an army, not with desperation. He had chosen correctly. He had chosen power. He had chosen strategy. He lifted the glass, and then a soft knock on his penthouse door, 3 taps, weak, uneven, barely audible over the rain. Dante froze. His drink slipped in his hand, shattered on the floor, amber spreading like a wound. The knock came again, and a woman's voice whispered his name, faint, breaking, unmistakable. Amara. And then the knocking stopped. The sound of her voice, raw, fragile, barely formed, sliced through Dante like a blade made of memory. He stood frozen, lungs locked, as if the storm outside had reached into his chest and ripped the air out. Impossible, impossible, impossible. He crossed the room in 3 strides. By the time he yanked the penthouse door open, the hallway was empty. No footsteps, no shadow, no silhouette. Just a smear of water from the leaking emergency light overhead and the echo of a whisper that felt stolen from a dream. Her voice had been too weak, too real, too close. A hallucination? A trick? A memory resurfacing under pressure? No. He knew the differences. This had been her. But how? She was supposed to be locked away. She was supposed to be dying. She was supposed to be... He shut that thought down before it could finish forming. He stepped into the hallway, scanning both directions. Nothing but sterile air and the distant hum of generators fighting the blackout across the city. The storm had knocked out half the grid. His entire building felt like a throat holding back a scream. He crouched, fingers brushing the floor. Water, fresh, warm from body heat, and mixed with something faintly metallic. His stomach tightened. He stood, every nerve alert, then returned inside and shut the door. The penthouse felt wrong now, too open, too exposed, too empty. He pulled his gun, swept the rooms, checked the balcony, the hidden passage in the closet, the soundproof safe room. Nothing. But the silence wasn't comforting. It was suffocating. He returned to the main room, hands braced against the counter, head bowed as lightning flashed white across the glass. His heartbeat drummed hard, uneven, violent. He didn't imagine her voice. Someone brought her here, or someone wanted him to think so. Either option meant escalation. He grabbed the broken glass off the floor, barely aware of the sting of small cuts forming along his fingers. He needed clarity. He needed information. He needed... His phone buzzed. The screen flickered before displaying a single message, time-stamped 15 minutes earlier, sent when his phone was off. A video file, unlabeled, untraceable. Dante tapped it open. The image was grainy but unmistakable. Amara, strapped to a bed, breathing shallow, barely conscious. A monitor beside her flashed irregular readings. Her skin looked too pale, her lips too cold, her wrists tense with pain. The camera panned slightly, revealing someone's silhouette standing behind the lens, deliberately out of view. Then Marcello's voice, smooth and cruel, filled the room. "She called for you, you know." Dante's jaw knotted. Marcello continued, "She should have saved her breath." The camera zoomed on Amara's face, her lashes trembling, her mouth parted in a silent cry. She tried to say something. The audio was faint, but Dante caught it. Auntie." His vision tightened at the edges. She was alive, barely, suffering, reaching for him, and he had ignored her. Marcello chuckled, soft and mocking. "She was right outside your door, darling. You didn't even open it fast enough." Dante's pulse buckled. That meant the knock. That meant the whisper. That meant the faint trail of warmth on the hallway floor. She had been here, not a hallucination. Not a trick. She had been here, alive, struggling, trying to reach him with the last strength she had, and he hadn't been there. Marcello's final words drifted from the speaker. "Don't worry, I've taken her somewhere safer." The screen went black. Dante's breath dropped into something sharp and lethal. Not rage, not fear, something deeper, something volcanic. He replayed her whisper in his mind, weak, frayed, desperate. And then, for the first time in years, he felt something break open inside his chest. A crack, a rupture, the beginning of a collapse he couldn't stop. He grabbed his coat, keys, gun, and stormed toward the elevator. But halfway across the room, his phone buzzed again. A voice message, this one shorter. This one labeled with one name, Amara. His thumb hovered. Then he pressed play. The recording stuttered at first, as if her breath had been too shallow to trigger the microphone. Rain pounded in the background, a storm identical to the one outside his window, then her voice, barely there. I'm scared. His throat locked. Please. A sudden gasp, a muffled sound, a scuffle. Then another man's voice, not Marcello's, deeper, rougher. Time's up. The recording ended. Dante didn't breathe. Not for a long moment. When he finally moved, it was slow, deliberate, terrifyingly controlled. The type of calm that only existed in men who had killed enough times to become fluent in violence. He pocketed the phone and left the penthouse, each step echoing with purpose. No hesitation now, no logic, no strategy, only inevitability. Amara, the edge of collapsed voices drifted around her like underwater echoes. She's fading. Not much time. Tell Viscari we need to move her. Pain pulsed in her skull, each throb pulling her toward unconsciousness. Her body felt boneless, her skin cold, her breath thin as paper. She tried to open her eyes. One barely obeyed. The world tilted sideways, metal rails, a flickering light, a hand tightening around her wrist to check her pulse. Her mouth opened. Nothing else came. Her body betrayed her. A sudden wave of dizziness crashed over her, knocking the last remaining fragments of strength from her limbs. Her vision pulsed black, then red, then black again. She heard a voice, maybe Marcello's, maybe someone else's, saying, "She won't last another hour." Somewhere deep inside, she tried to fight, tried to call his name again, tried to stay alive long enough for him to find her, but the weight dragging her under was too strong. Her breath shortened, her pulse slowed, her fingers slackened, the world dimmed. Her last thought was his name, a whisper in her mind, a hope she didn't believe. Then everything went silent, and Amara Hale lost consciousness. Dante drove through the storm like a man possessed, headlights cutting through sheets of rain, tires hissing over water-slick streets. The city blurred. Nothing mattered except one thought, one pulse that had finally pierced his carefully constructed armor. Amara. Hours of fury, strategy, and blind pursuit had led to this point, but the full scope of the danger had eluded him. He had ignored her, discarded her pleas, treated the messages as traps. Pride had guided him, and now pride was the noose tightening around both their throats. His phone buzzed relentlessly in his pocket. Notifications stacked like daggers, each a silent scream he had refused to acknowledge. One message slipped through the chaos, different from the others. A map coordinate paired with a short note. "She's at the old Viscari mill, alive but failing." The words were simple, stark, terrifying. The truth hit Dante like a hammer. She wasn't just a pawn, she was dying. Every decision he had made, every calculated delay, every refusal to act, had brought her closer to the edge. He slammed the brakes outside the desolate structure. The mill, abandoned for years, was a decayed skeleton of metal beams and rust. Rain streamed down its sides, slick and brutal, wind howling as if warning him to stop. But Dante didn't stop. He ran. Inside, the shadows were absolute. Water pooled at his feet. The smell of iron, damp wood, and decay clawed at him. And then he saw it. A dim flicker of movement near the far wall. Amara. She lay strapped to a hospital gurney, weak, barely able to lift her head. Her hair was matted with rain and something darker. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, some cracked, some blinking erratically. Her chest rose with shallow, uneven breaths. The sight froze Dante. Every plan, every strategy, every ounce of pride dissolved. He had ignored every warning, every whisper, every plea she had sent him, and now he faced the reality he had tried to deny. Marcello's shadow detached from the wall, stepping into the flickering light. "Finally," he said, voice smooth and deliberate. "You made it. Too bad she won't last long enough for you to save her." Dante's gaze snapped to him, every fiber of his body coiling with controlled violence. His mind raced, breaking down the path that led here. Marcello had orchestrated everything with precision. He had tracked Dante's routines, anticipated his pride, manipulated him into ignoring messages, into delaying action. Every call, every knock, every whisper Amara had managed to send, Marcello had ensured Dante saw it too late. And now Amara's life hung in the balance because Dante had been too stubborn, too proud, too self-assured to act. He turned toward her, every second a cruel reminder of what he had lost. "Dante." Amara's voice was a rasp, barely audible. "I thought you'd come." Her gaze lifted toward him, weak, desperate, a reflection of every regret he had buried. He moved forward, ignoring Marcello, ignoring the storm, ignoring logic. All he could see was her, fragile, broken, and entirely dependent on him. Marcello laughed, sharp and cold. Ah, yes, the mighty Valenti reduced to a trembling boy, because he finally cares. Dante's hand clenched around the gun at his side, but the moment felt wrong. Not for action, not for bullets. This wasn't about killing Marcello yet. This was about undoing the consequences of his own failings. Every step toward Amara was measured, careful. Every thought screamed, "You should have listened. You should have moved sooner. You have no excuse." She lifted her hand weakly, brushing against his sleeve. It should have been simple. It should have been enough. But she was fading. Too fast. The monitors beeped irregularly, a terrifying rhythm that matched Dante's own heartbeat. Marcello's smirk widened. "Do you feel it? The inevitability? Your choices brought her here. Your pride has almost killed her, and nothing you do now can save the hours you've lost." Dante didn't answer. He ignored the taunt, focusing only on her. He reached for the straps. His fingers worked with desperation, shaking, not with fear, but with recognition of the stakes. Amara's eyelids fluttered. She tried to speak. Her lips barely moved. "Dante." His chest constricted. He cursed himself. Every rational thought abandoned him, every plan discarded. All he had was this, the proof of what he had done wrong, and the chance, slim, fragile, to undo it. He freed one strap, then another. Her body sagged in relief. Her head leaned toward him. She coughed weakly, tasting iron. Marcello's eyes narrowed. "Time is shorter than you think." Dante didn't respond. His hands shook as he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he remembered, but weaker than he ever imagined. Every breath she drew seemed borrowed. Every heartbeat, a reminder that he had squandered the time he'd been given. He felt a wave of nausea, a fury, a despair so deep it threatened to swallow him whole. Pride had brought him here. Pride had delayed him. Pride had almost destroyed the only thing he had ever loved unconditionally. And in that moment, Dante realized the full weight of the revelation. Every second wasted had been a second closer to losing her forever. He lifted his gaze to the monitors. Numbers faltered. The line beeped erratically. Her pulse was dangerously low. Her eyes flickered. And then the world shifted beneath him as he realized the most horrifying truth of all. She had survived the streets, Marcello's torment and abandonment, but she might not survive his pride. His hand tightened around her wrist, and for the first time in hours, Dante didn't care about control, strategy, or revenge. All that existed was her fragile body in his arms. And outside the storm, the night seemed to wait for the choice he had refused to make hours ago, because the next second would decide everything. And Dante froze. He understood the full weight of his mistake, and it was unbearable. The city bled beneath the storm. Rain washed every street in gray, every puddle reflecting fractured neon like shards of glass. Dante drove fast, faster than safe, faster than reason, ignoring the lights and the angry horn of a distant taxi. Every heartbeat screamed a warning. She was close to the edge. Every second he had wasted, every pride-fueled hesitation, reverberated in his chest like a hammer. Marcello had orchestrated it all. Every message, every threat, every cryptic hint had been designed to strip him of his control. And for once, Dante understood the full scale of his failure. Not the empire he built, not the enemies he crushed, not even the blood he spilled with surgical precision. This failure was personal, irreversible, human. He reached the abandoned mill first, headlights cutting across rusted metal beams. The door hung crooked on its hinges. Inside, the air smelled of wet iron and decay, and faint traces of antiseptic hinted at improvised medical care. He stepped in, gun raised, senses on full alert. The first thing he saw, Amara. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, trembling motions. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, some broken, some blinking frantically. Her skin was pale as ash. Her hair clung to her face like wet silk. Every inch of her radiated fragility, a cruel reflection of the hours he had spent ignoring every warning. He dropped the gun without thinking, moving to her side, hands trembling as he checked the restraints. They were loose. Marcello had left them just enough to prolong her suffering without letting her die before Dante arrived. He grabbed her, cradled her against his chest, feeling her weight like a confession of every error he had ever made. "Amara," he whispered, voice raw. "I'm here. She coughed weakly, trying to speak, but only managed a hoarse rasp. Her eyes fluttered open, barely able to focus. Ante." He pressed a hand to her face, brushing damp hair back. His chest tightened so hard it hurt. "Shh, I've got you. You're safe now." But deep down, he knew the lie. She was not safe. Not yet. Her vitals were erratic. Monitor beeping violently, a jagged warning that her body was failing. Marcello stepped out from the shadows, slow, deliberate, smug. "You made it," he said. "Finally. But see, Dante, it's too late to undo the damage you've already caused." Dante lifted his gaze, jaw tight. "Move. Get out of my way." Marcello laughed softly. "You think this is about me? No, it's always been about your choices. Pride, Dante. You refuse to listen, to act, to admit you were wrong, and she's paying for it." The truth hit Dante like a physical blow. Marcello hadn't only captured her, he had engineered every step to expose Dante's fatal flaw. Every delay, every ignored call, every destroyed message had been intentional. Every second of hesitation had brought her closer to death. He tightened his grip, hauling Amara to her feet. She wavered, leaning on him for strength, too weak to stand alone. He scanned the room, no other threats, only Marcello smirking, the storm outside echoing the chaos within him. Dante's mind raced. Hospital, paramedics, extraction. Every second counted. He had to get her out, alive, before the consequences of his pride were written permanently in her body. He bolted toward the exit, Marcello's laughter chasing them like a curse. Rain poured in through broken windows, drenching them in cold sheets. Dante didn't care. He didn't stop. He didn't look back. As they emerged, The wind tore at their clothes, whipping through his hair and hers. Her breaths were ragged, shallow. His pulse matched hers. Every heartbeat screamed that time was no longer an ally. A screech of tires behind them made Dante glance. Marcello's car was waiting, engine running, a threat unspoken but clear. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed Amara, ran toward the street, ignoring the mud and puddles, ignoring exhaustion. Dante's heart raced with a singular focus. Keep her alive. Every strategic calculation, every instinct honed through years of violence, pointed in one direction: survival. Her survival. He reached the car, yanked open the door, and slung her into the passenger seat. She moaned faintly, body shaking. He slammed the door, jumped in, and spun the wheels into the storm, tires hissing as they tore through the flooded streets. He glanced at her. Her eyelids were half closed, lips parted, breathing shallow. Every gauge of life flashed alarms in his mind. The gravity of his mistakes pressed down on him. He had almost lost her. A memory pierced him. Her whisper from hours ago, the messages he ignored. Every warning, every plea, every subtle call for help he had refused to honor. Pride had blinded him. Pride had almost killed her. The storm pounded the windshield. Rain blurred the road, the city lights smeared across the glass. Dante didn't notice. He didn't see the potholes, the flood, the chaos. All that existed was her fragile body in his arms. He pressed the accelerator. Faster, faster. She was slipping toward unconsciousness. Every second felt like a lifetime. He didn't care about himself. Every muscle burned. Every nerve screamed. Only her mattered. Finally, the headlights cut through the haze. A hospital. Emergency entrance. Doctors and nurses rushed forward, taking her from his arms. Dante stepped back, drenched, exhausted, watching as she was wheeled inside. A voice called after him. One of the nurses shouted details about monitors and vitals. He barely registered. He waited outside, drenched, hands trembling, heart hammering with fear and guilt. Hours later, Dante was pulled inside to see her resting, still fragile, still barely conscious, hooked to monitors and IVs. Her hand twitched slightly, brushing against the blanket. He leaned close. "Amara." His voice cracked. "You're safe. You're alive." Her eyes fluttered open. Recognition, relief, pain, and love all collided in her gaze. And then Dante noticed something that made his blood freeze. On the bedside table next to her, a small envelope. Open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in her handwriting: "I survived, but not without losing a part of me. You left me alone when I needed you most." Dante sank to his knees, hands clasped over his face. Pride had cost him hours of agony, hours where her life teetered on the edge, hours that could never be reclaimed. And behind the ICU doors, someone watched. Not Marcello, someone else. A final revelation that froze Dante in a moment of terror, guilt, and dread. Because the envelope wasn't the only thing left. Beneath it, hidden in the folds, was a small key and a note, typed, blunt, cruel. "She is alive for now, but the real danger begins the moment you think you've saved her." Dante's eyes widened. The storm outside seemed to still, the world holding its breath. He understood in that instant. Surviving Marcello was only the beginning. The true reckoning had just begun. And for the first time in his life, Dante Valenti realized that some choices could never be undone.